Fox Business Alert. Stocks continue to rock, and with the Dow's modest advance today, it is now close to 8% this month. So setting the stage for what could be the best September performance in more than 70 years. And keep in mind, this is historically the most problematic month for the markets. Not that other scary one, October. Economic numbers have looked good, but they have looked good before. And inflation's been in check, but it's actually been in check for a while. And mergers have been coming back, but they've been back for quite a while. So what's new here? This growing Democratic mutiny over extending all the Bush tax cuts. The more piled on, the more the Dow's gains have piled up. A connection to Jonathan Honig, Tom Belesis, and Carolyn Heldman. All with me now. John, your thoughts on that?
Well, Neil, of course, many factors affect the market, especially given all the intervention that government has provided in the last couple of months and couple of years.
Yeah, but I'm going with this one, Jonathan.
Well, this has a factor, and I think that, Neil, there's no question that the fact that many politicians, even those on the left, are reconsidering the tax hikes, I think is a positive trend, a longer-term positive trend. I chalk it up to what, you could call perhaps the Tea Party effect. But even the president in the last couple of weeks has attempted to appear a little bit more pro-business. There's no question that longer-term, that is a positive effect for the markets and for the economy as a whole.
Tom?
Well, I think the effect of monetary policy is uncertain. And I do believe right now on spurring economic growth, you have to cut capital gains tax to spur economic activity and fuel job growth.
What if this likely extension doesn't get extended?
I think you're going to have a retraction in spending from businesses, which is going to...
What about Wall Street?
Wall Street, too, is going to retract because, again, at the end of the day, they don't know what the rules of the game is. I mean, you have all this cash in the books, and no one wants to spend. Why? They don't know the direction of which we're going in terms of the economy. So it's a direct correlation where if you cut capital gains and you keep taxes low, people are going to spend, which is going to spur economic growth.
Caroline, what do you make of this?
Well, Neil, I think it will be very difficult for the Republicans to get the 60 votes that they need in order to extend it for the top 2%. I do think that the middle-class tax cut will go through, which will directly stimulate the economy, because what we're missing here is demand. The reason that companies are stockpiling is that there was enough slack
yeah, but what
for
if they
them
don't
to
need
not
it in
do
the
additional
Senate? You're
hiring.
right, getting the 60 votes, by the way, for either party is difficult. But they got to complete this and sew it up in the House. And now we've got 40 Democrats who say no way. So this thing's dead unless they change something, isn't it, Carol?
Well, I would hope that it is. I mean, I'm definitely opposed to it. And if it does pass now, it will be made possibly permanent.
No. What I meant, Caroline, I'm sorry I wasn't clear. This idea of not extending the Bush tax cuts on the rich is dead because the votes aren't there in the House to put a nail in the coffin.
Well, that's quite possibly the case, Neil, but I'm looking more closely at the Senate, where I think it will be a harder battle. And unless Democrats capitulate in some late electioneering and pass it for the top 2%, I would be shocked if it passed in the Senate.
And Neil, they haven't. And that's, I think, that what haven't changed. Even if these tax cuts get extended, which it doesn't look like they will, the Democrats' main philosophy, basically, of redistribution of, as the gentleman earlier on from the VC firm, taking from the rich to give to the poor, that still remains at the center of their economic policy. So even if the tax cuts get extended, that hasn't changed one bit.
Bottom line, he seems to be saying, don't get your hopes up.
You know what? He may be right. All I can tell you that...
He's not a movie star. You are. He's going to be at Wall Street 3.
Yeah, sure. Neil, all I can tell you is that recent studies like today in the Wall Street Journal say that you got to keep capital gains taxes low. That's how we're going to fuel.
Didn't you hear of venture capitalists? They don't matter.
Well, listen, they do matter because you know what? People want their money for themselves to spend in their business. They don't want the government controlling their money. And that's how we're going to spur economic activity in this environment.
All right, take a break here. Crude, rude, and lewd, but say this of Carl. He's got Andrew tied up in knots. This whole tax debate may be tossed to a lame duck session. At least that's what a lot of you think. According to our Cavuto web poll, 82% of you do not see a resolution happening before the midterm elections. You can still vote by logging on to foxbusiness.com/Cavuto and weigh in on this. Meantime, 23 years after declaring greed is good, Gordon Gekko is back kind of saying greed is, well, it's still good. In the Wall Street sequel, Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, the attack on money-hungry Wall Streeters never stops. This time featuring our very own Tom Belesis. Take a look at this.
I just don't think it's a risk our debt should be taking right now, that's all. I'd wait.
Wait?
Yeah.
Wait for what? Your beam me up Scotty hydrogen fusion deal?
Well, now you're talking about something else. United Fusion Corporation, Stan. Come on, it's apples and oranges.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You mean the deal that we already sank $50 million into, Mr. Brainiac?
Alternative energy is what biotech was 15 years ago, Stan. Come on, you were young once, you know that. Profits are not quarterly. The runs could be huge.
We'll all be dead by the time your nutty professor mixes any money.
Like this coming from the guy who said Google was a bubble.
Tom scared me. Could the movie end up hurting the image of all these Wall Streeters with some of the damage done by this rich Wall Streeter? In other words, you play such a convincing part that you reinforce the image, oh, they're all like that.
Well, Oliver's a great storyteller.
Oh, it's Oliver now. Oliver Stone is just Oliver.
And remember, it's a story. It's a classic story about, you know, greed, good
just
versus
like JFK
evil.
was a story.
Well, yeah, well, you could say that. I mean, betrayal. I mean, with a list of strong characters like you have in a movie, like Michael Douglas, you know, coming back and reprising the role of Gordon Gekko, Shia LaBeouf, Josh Brolin. I mean, all these list of characters make it for a great movie.
But I haven't seen the whole movie. I've seen the clips, so I think I'm an authority and know more about this than you do. What I'm getting is a sense that we're back to the greed is good stuff. These Wall Streeters really haven't changed since the 80s. They're still the same despicable bunch.
No, not at all.
Really?
You know, it's, you know, I
Is
think
your character despicable?
the character portrays what, you know, the backdrop of the economic meltdown, okay? You know, we all had a role in to fill the character for that specific
So Oliver
role.
Stone never pulled you aside, because I know it's Oliver too, but he never pulled you aside and said, Tom, you know, no offense to your crowd, but they killed us.
No, not at all. I mean,
Yeah.
Oliver has said that, you know, Wall Street's a great engine for capitalism, but, you know, some people found more money in speculation, you know, and he used that in the backdrop of the movie. That's why it made the movie so great. Right. You know, and remember, Oliver's father was a stockbroker. He worked till he died, doing what he loved.
Yeah, he wasn't bitter and taking it out.
Absolutely not.
All right, Jonathan, what do you make of that?
Well, Neil, I'll reserve comment. I haven't seen the movie. The buzz so far isn't that good, despite, you know, I know it's a very fine performance. But I think it's hard to say that.
Tom, you're looking at a future Oscar winner.
Excellent. He's the star of the movie. Exactly. But, I mean, honestly, Neil, this is a guy that is Oliver Stone, not Tom, who pals around with Hugo Chavez. I mean, he digs up and Tom, but, you know, Stone digs up the old tire cliche that Wall Streeters are evil, that they're out to get you, that they're crooks. He puts a new soundtrack on it for the 21st century, and this is just the same old tire cliche. This is old wine in new bottles, and I'm sorry that we never see businessmen depicted in a heroic sense, not as the evil, nefarious evildoers.
And, you know, Carol, I know Tom. I know I don't even follow his career. He is a good guy, and he does look out for his investors, and he's not sort of this money-grubbing, shallow SOB that I think you might be portrayed as in the movie. I hope I'm wrong. But I'm wondering if that voiced the image again, that's more typical on Wall Street. Carolyn, what do you think?
Well, Neil, I think that he's telling the truth about what happened in 2007 and 2008, and he's telling it probably in a complex way if it's anything like his previous movies. And I hope that the American public learns an awful lot about derivatives.
What do you mean he's telling it in a complex way? Did you see JFK?
Well,
there's a whole generation of kids who grew up thinking that's what happened.
Well, he provided many different angles, though, as he did with the movie W, which I took my students to, and my more liberal students thought that it was just a conservative piece.
You took them to see W.
Well, of course, I take him to see all political movies that I possibly can, and I believe that he tells it in a more complex fashion than simply just painting them with the broad brush. Although in this instance,
this does paint with a broad brush.
This does paint with
a broad brush.
Right, right. Because I assume this movie has a long section about Barney Frank, about the Community Reinvestment Act. You probably got a whole hour just on Fannie and Freddie, right?
Oh, come on.
No, do they criticize politicians?
You can't blame the government for incrusing liquidity in the market.
I don't care about liquidity. I care about Tom, the movie star. Do they criticize politicians or just kind of sort of make you guys evil?
You know, the part of the system that failed the people. I mean, you know, so, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, what Oliver puts together is a story.
I think that is so cool you can keep calling him Oliver.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we built a great relationship. I mean, making a movie is like going to war. So when you make a movie
let me answer
with
a couple
cast
personal
members,
questions. I hear that some big-name talent from CNBC, that's all I'm going to say, had speaking roles in this movie. In fact, they came in to read script. I was not asked, although I'm told that yours truly. They pulled audio from some of our newscasts here. Could very well be things that I did. I don't know if it's Cavuto or Your Worlds on Fox News. And I was told there was more. But, Tom, here's the Fox News alert. For aesthetic reasons, Oliver Stone cut me out. That's true. I heard for aesthetic reasons. And since you and Oliver are like that.
How dare he?
How dare he is right.
How dare he?
Have you heard that?
Neil,
I have not heard that, but I mean, to cut you
This
out
could
of the
affect
movie,
the crowds that show up.
I mean, yeah, I agree.
So he never pulled you aside and said, no offense, Tom, you're talking to Neil. I would no sooner have him in my movie than the Man on the Moon.
No.
He never said that.
Never said that.
I think he did, and you're just not saying because you don't want to hurt my feelings.
No.
Jonathan, are you offended by that?
Well, Neil, I'm not offended you're on the movie. I wouldn't want to be in a movie. I think it's
damn
with all due
right.
respect
You're
to
damn
Tom,
right. I don't want to be in that movie.
I think it's sorry.
Yeah.
The people who slip capitalism's throat, Neil, it's the businessmen. With all due respect to Tom, it's the businessmen who stand up, who allow themselves to be betrayed as that money-grubbing SOB, as you
If
said.
asked, I will not star,
This
Mr.
movie
Belesis.
was a lot of fun making.
Oh, please, please. Caroline, are you despondent I'm not in the movie?
I'm a little upset by that, Neil. You
Understood.
know, I would have loved to have seen you make your movie star debut.
Yeah, well, it didn't happen. So, Oliver Stone, I don't care. I still love Tom. You are useless. Bye. Bye. See you tomorrow.